All right. Is this on? Okay, no. This will be on though, right? Okay. So like April said, she kind of conned me into it a little bit. I have only actually been doing sourdough since like Thanksgiving, but I've been professional, I guess, baking for like 12 years. So I was still super intimidated. I never got into it in 2020 like a lot of people did, and it's just like you have to keep something alive, and it's really intimidating to start because it's like a 24-hour process to make a loaf of bread, and if it goes wrong, then you wasted a lot of time. So I'm going to show you some of the different steps, because a lot of times when you read the recipes and stuff online, it's incredibly overwhelming because there's lots of sourdough words and just 24 hours worth of things you have to do. So I'm going to start at the very beginning. You're going to be getting a starter like this. Okay, I'm up there. And will this show too? If I need it, I'll look at that. Cool. So this is a starter. It's wild, active yeast. And how you feed it is with flour and water. So this is an unfed starter. So it's kind of just loose and runny and no bubbles. This is a fed starter. It has some bubbles in it. There are a lot of different ratios that you can feed it, but I think the most common is 1 to 1 to 1. So I have my scale. You can do sourdough without a scale. It is a little less accurate, but scales are super, super helpful. So this is, I have the starter already measured out. So that's 100 grams of starter. And I brought 100 grams of flour and 100 grams of water. So first thing you do to feed the starter is just add your water. I'm a little over, but that's okay. And you just mix it to kind of dissolve it. Oh, should I stay under here? Yeah. And normally, when you feed your starter, you also will want to discard. Which seemed very wasteful to me when I first started, because I couldn't believe that after all this work, you just throw some of your starter away, like really half or more. But you can save it in your fridge and use it in like different breads or bagels or muffins, cookies, things like that. So that just, if I did have to separate it, I have another container that you can put in your fridge and just keep your starter or the discard in there. So that's good. You can clear your scale. Let's make sure this is 100. Perfect. All right, so I'll show you what this is supposed to look like. It's kind of gets thick and clumpy, and that is perfect and beautiful and just what you want it to look like. And so on the recipe that you guys will get with your starter, I did put time frames on everything because that was one of the most confusing parts to me, was like when to do everything. So mixing your starter is fully done now. So that's easy, but now you let it sit for anywhere from like 6 to 12 hours to use it. Do you have a question already? No, you're so... I just do warm. I don't do temp. I know some people do cold or like just regular. I just do warm water from the fridge. I think it helps activate it a little faster if you do warm. So that's done. This now will just sit on your counter for, like I said, 6 to 12 hours. I've done it where I make it, or I feed it first thing in the morning, and I'm able to make something like in late afternoon around dinner, and then it can do its whole thing overnight then. Or sometimes I'll feed it before I go to bed, wake up and use it in the morning. The next thing, so when I got here, I actually mixed up this loaf. So this is just gonna be for an artisan loaf, which is the recipe that you guys will have. And I put all the ingredients together, and the next step after using your active is to mix all the ingredients, and this is just what's considered a shaggy dough. There's nothing like really special about it yet. So you mix it, and you're going to let it sit for about a half hour or an hour and let it rest. And then so I mixed it when I got here. And then what you're going to do is your stretch and folds, which is very iconic for the sourdoughs. There are two different kinds of folds you can do. There's the stretch and fold and a coil fold. So I'll show you both of those, but this process does take like a half hour 3 times. So it's going to take you an hour and a half to do your sets of stretch and fold, plus the half hour that it's already been resting. So once you make your bread, you need to be around your dough for 2 hours before it sits and rests for like an entire night. It is, you do have to baby it a little. So stretch and fold, all the recipes will say you grab the side and you stretch it up and you bring it towards the center. So this is kind of sticky, but the more stretch and folds you do, it just becomes less sticky. So you turn it a quarter turn, grab it again, stretch it, fold it into the center, quarter turn, do your third side, stretch it up, and this helps develop the gluten in your dough. You stretch and fold. And then you are just going to recover it. And every time you do your stretch and folds, it's going to start to get smoother and more elastic, and it'll start to feel like an actual dough instead of like soft and sticky. I'm also, since I'm doing it, instead of waiting a half hour to show you the other fold, I'm just going to go ahead and show you what I like to do. I like to do the coil folds. No particular reason I've done stretch and folds, but I personally like the coil folds. I still do 4 of them, but what you do is you grab it on 2 sides and you pull it up, and it kind of like dangles, hangs like that. And you set it on itself, and then I turn it halfway and do the other 2 sides. I kind of wiggle it so that it stretches down a little, and then I do it a total of 4 times. I don't know if I did all 4 right now, plus my stretch and folds, if it would do anything weird to the dough. But, so that's what you do for coil folds. Cover it. You can cover it loosely with a lid like this. I'm going to use this towel. Or saran wrap or a wet tea towel. You want to keep it covered, or it'll form like a crust on it, and then you have some crusty pieces in with your dough. So that is the stretch and folds and coil folds. So step 1, feed your starter. Step 2 is make your dough. Once you do all hour and a half worth of stretch and folds, that is also can be kind of lenient. If you want it to go quicker, you can do 20-minute rests instead of 30-minute rests. And the other night, I accidentally forgot, and there was one stretch that was like an hour and 15 minutes, and it was fine. So, you want to shoot for a half hour, but it wasn't the end of the world. Let me see, what else did I bring? Oh, okay. So pretend that is resting all night while you're sleeping, or if you made that in the morning and had 2 hours to do your stretch and folds before work or whatever it is, you come home 10 hours-ish later. You want it to be kind of like 80% to double what the original size was. So I made this yesterday, and this is, so it's a little sticky still, but this is definitely double of what, I don't know if I can get both in there. You can't really see, but this is definitely double. So here is my dough that is ready to shape. And that's another thing, that there's lots of different ways to shape it and do it, but I am going to show you what I've been doing, what I've had success with recently. Let me see if I can get a little bit of flour on here. So you want the bubbles. You don't want to necessarily pop the bubbles, but you want to just gently, I just do this usually on my countertop. And so you lightly flour it. get that out. And now what you're going to do is okay, I can see over there. You're going to do what's called degas, which is like punching it down if you've ever made like pizza dough and you punch it down. So you can stretch this out to a rectangle and kind of go like this with your fingers. Get a little bit of the air out, but you don't need to like pop all the bubbles or anything. And there are 2 different ways that I have personally done this next part, which is the shaping of the dough. And I think on the recipe that you guys are going to have, I say to take one of the edges and fold it into the center, and you're going to kind of just work your way around and fold it up like this. And now, the part with all the folds is that what you're looking at is the bottom. There's going to be a lot of flipping over in the next part. So this is the bottom. You flip that over. And this is the scooch that, I don't know if you've seen people do this on Instagram, or people will say like to drag your ball of sourdough on the counter. So this part I did have to watch videos of when I first started because I just wanted to make sure I got it right. But this is to create surface tension on the top of your ball of dough. So I flipped it over so all the folds are on the bottom. And you're going to cup your hands and gently pull it towards you, just a little, and then you rotate it. And again, you gently pull it towards you. And it's starting to stay a little bit more in a ball. And I do that 3 or 4 times. And then it's got a little bit more tension. You don't need to pull it very hard or very far. And I've done that, and now I let it sit and rest for 10 to 20 minutes, just so that the gluten will relax, and then it's easier to work. And after that, I'm going to flip it back over and do the degassing, the folding, and this step one more time. So that is another, that only took me like 3 to 5 minutes, and then the 20-minute rest again, and then you just do it over. And after you have done the second round of shaping into a ball is when you are going to put it in a bowl with a towel to do its final rest. So I do not have another clean bowl, but you just put a towel on your bowl. You're going to sprinkle some flour on, which I left my extra flour in the kitchen, but that's okay. So say I did the second round. What? Oh, no, that's okay. It's not that big a deal. So this is good to go. We are going to flip it over again. So we have the tension on the top, and you're going to put that part on your floured surface of your towel, like that. And this bowl is a little bigger than what I normally put it in. I like to keep it in like this size or smaller. I've even used a colander, a strainer, with a towel in it, just so that it doesn't want to spread out further, because you want it to stay kind of medium size, because it has to fit in like a Dutch oven if you're going to put it in something with a lid. So I just cover it like this with my towel, and I let it sit and rest for about an hour, sometimes 2 hours. And you want it to get just a little bit puffy, like 30% bigger. You don't want it to double again. And then, when it's almost done, or when it is done rising, you're going to start your oven with your Dutch oven and lid in the oven. Set it to 450, let your pan preheat in there, and then get a piece of parchment, and I open this up, put the parchment on or have it on the counter, and flip it over, and that's when you're going to do your scoring. Scoring can be super basic. It doesn't have to be like flowers and vines and all the pretty things that you see on Instagram. So I just put a big one on the side, and then like this one was one of the first ones that I've got to actually, you can like see my second set of scoring on there. So I was pretty proud. But you're going to put a deep score on one side, or like this one, I did the X in the middle, and that is going to let all of the pressure out, and it's going to let it expand without busting open in spots you don't want it to. The first one I made, I did not score deep enough, so it did have like random explosions out that I did not put a crease there, but it didn't have enough room to expand. So I've figured out that when, I didn't bring one that I can cut, but when you are cutting with either a sharp knife or a razor blade, or if you have a sourdough lame, you want to do more than just like break the skin on the top of the bread. You actually want to cut kind of deep into it so that you can see, once you do it, you'll see that there's kind of like a different texture on the inside. It's the bubbly, like holy, airy part of the bread. So you want to cut, and it will start to like open and expand as you do it, and that's totally fine. And then you can make smaller scores on the other areas if you feel like it. And people get the contrast by putting flour on the surface of your sourdough before you cut it. So if you want the contrast with like the flour, you can do that. But then this is what gets created. This is called the ear of your sourdough, the part that pops up and gets a little crust on it from you scoring it. So that is called the ear. And there is, the biggest thing, one of my favorite things is warm bread. I have always loved bread, and warm bread fresh out of the oven is amazing, but really, which is very hard sometimes, you want to let your sourdough rest after you pull it out of the oven for like an hour or longer. Sometimes it's best to like bake it in the afternoon if you're going to have it for dinner, but if you cut it open while it's steaming, as delicious as that is, it can let a lot of the moisture out of your bread, so then when it cools, it'll get a little drier. You might not even notice, but they do recommend that you wait for it to completely cool, or at least cool quite a bit before you cut into it. But baking. Baking it is actually very easy. That's probably like the quickest and easiest step. So you put it in the whole piece of parchment in your Dutch oven and put the lid back on and bake it for 20 minutes covered with the lid, and then pull it off, put it back in for another 20 to 25. If mine's starting to like burn or brown too much on the top, for the last like 5 minutes, I'll just put a piece of tin foil gently over the top. I don't like seal it in or anything. But yeah. You kind of don't know what the inside's going to look like until you cut into it. So there's a lot of troubleshooting once you cut into it and kind of see how your loaves are. I've had ones that were over-fermented, but that also looks very similar to when you under-ferment things, so it can be incredibly confusing. But it is a lot of troubleshooting, and I have found that it's really fun, though. Some people want nothing to do with sourdough just because they're like, I'll eat sourdough, but I don't want to keep it alive. I don't want to spend that much time making bread. I don't have time to do all the kneading and resting and everything. But I've had a lot of fun with just the different things you can make. We love having like fresh bread for dinner, or like this is a chocolate loaf, which I will get to cut open this afternoon. Again, I'm excited to see what it looks like because this is only the second time I've made a chocolate loaf, so we'll see what the inside looks like. But there's a lot of things that you can make. Bagels and English muffins are also really easy recipes once you feel comfortable feeding and using your starter. It really is just about like planning ahead. I wish we could have sourdough like same day, but a lot of times there is not recipes that you can use it in the same day. So you just have to plan at least a day ahead. That way you have time to feed and activate your starter, and then have time to prep it and bake it ahead. There is ways that you can put it in different stages. You can put it in the fridge so that you can kind of pause the fermentation and then pull it out when you're ready. And that's been kind of hit and miss for me, but it's just finding the right time and knowing when to put it in the fridge and when to pull it back out and how much time to give it. So if you have questions about cold proofing, I can try to answer those for you. But other than that, I think that was a very fast run through of all the sourdough steps.
We're all so inspired. Good things take time, don't they? Will you move these under here so they can see them? Can you get that on there for just a second so you can see the chocolate loaf? Yeah, you just let them. So good. Who wants to go home and make sourdough? Yeah. And Robert said he may even, you guys, Robert said he may even edit the video so you can watch the demo again so you don't feel alone. So thank you so much, Rachel. Y'all go buy some of her baked goods. They're so delicious, and you don't have to make them. You can enjoy them same day.
That's true.
Just now in a few minutes. We are going to take a 5-minute break, and then we're going to start our final session for the day. So thank you guys so much for joining along with that.
Yeah.